In the final years of the Roman Empire's golden calm, before plague and betrayal spread like cracks through marble, there lived a weary emperor named Marcus Aurelius. The people of Rome called him wise, the Senate called him patient, the soldiers called him relentless. But in the silence of his private chambers, when the torches burned low and the cheers of the empire faded into the cold night wind, he called himself something else entirely, a student, not of war. Not of power, but of endurance. The rain struck against the palace roof in violent rhythm. Marcus sat alone beside a bronze oil lamp, writing into a worn collection of papers that no citizen was ever meant to read. Ink stained his fingers. His armor still carried dust from the northern frontiers, yet he had not removed it. A servant approached carefully. "Caesar," the servant whispered, bowing low, "the generals await your command." Marcus did not look up. "Tell them," he said calmly, "that death waits for us all regardless of command." The servant froze. Marcus finally lifted his eyes. "But while we breathe," he continued, "we shall do our duty." The servant nodded nervously and disappeared. Marcus returned to his writing. "You have power over your mind, not outside events." He paused, then crossed out the sentence violently. Outside events. How easy those words appeared on paper, how impossible they felt in life. Because outside his chambers the empire was rotting. Greed consumed senators. Cowardice spread among officials. The people worshipped pleasure more than virtue. Even his own commanders feared discomfort more than dishonor. And now the northern tribes gathered again beyond the Danube like wolves testing a weakening fence. Rome wanted comfort. Nature promised hardship. Marcus understood which one would win. He stood slowly and walked toward the balcony overlooking the sleeping city. Thousands of lights flickered beneath the dark sky. Somewhere below, men drank themselves unconscious. Some plotted, some prayed, some wept, and some would die before sunrise without ever understanding why they had suffered at all. Marcus closed his eyes. "The tragedy," he whispered to himself, "is not death." His fingers tightened around the stone railing. "It is living without discipline." A cold wind swept across the palace. For a brief moment, the emperor remembered being a young boy studying philosophy under candlelight. Back then he believed wisdom would bring peace. He smiled bitterly at the memory. Wisdom did not bring peace. Wisdom brought clarity, and clarity was often unbearable. A sudden knock echoed through the chamber. This time it was not a servant. It was General Cashin, tall, scarred, still carrying snow on his cloak from the northern roads. Marcus turned. "You came without summons." Cashin removed his gloves slowly. "I came because truth rarely waits for permission." Marcus gestured for him to continue. "The tribes have united." Marcus remained silent. Cashin stepped closer. "Not small raids anymore. Entire nations are moving south." "How many?" "Tens of thousands." Marcus looked toward the dark horizon beyond Rome's walls. Then he asked the question no frightened ruler ever truly wants answered. "And our men?" Cashin hesitated. That hesitation told Marcus everything. "Speak plainly." The general inhaled heavily. "They are tired." Marcus nodded once, not angry, not surprised, just tired himself. "Then we march." Cashin frowned. "You have not slept in 2 days, and yet dawn still arrives. The physicians warn your body is failing." Marcus looked directly into the general's eyes. "One day yours will fail too." Cashin lowered his head. The emperor placed a hand on the older soldier's shoulder. "Do not fear exhaustion, Cashin. Fear becoming the kind of man who worships comfort." The room fell silent except for the crackling of firewood. Marcus walked back toward his desk and picked up the unfinished pages of his private reflections. "You know," he said quietly, "Rome believes emperors are born different from other men." Cashin gave a faint smile. "Are they not?" Marcus stared at the ink upon his fingers. "No," he closed the papers carefully. "We simply suffer where others can see us." Hours later, before sunrise touched the city, the emperor rode north with the army. No parade, no celebration. Only iron wheels grinding against wet stone roads. The soldiers watched Marcus carefully as he passed among them. He wore simple armor. No golden crown, no jewels, no display of imperial vanity. One young soldier whispered to another, "Why does the emperor march beside us instead of riding ahead?" An older veteran answered before Marcus could hear. "Because he fears himself more than the enemy." The march lasted weeks. Rain turned roads into rivers of mud. Food spoiled. Cold winds tore through the camps at night. Complaints spread like infection. One evening near the frontier forests, Marcus walked through the camp listening quietly as soldiers grumbled around their fires. The emperor pushes too hard. We deserve rest. What is Rome to us now? Marcus stopped beside one fire. The men immediately fell silent. He sat beside them without invitation. No one moved. No one spoke. Finally, Marcus held out his hands toward the flames and said, "When a dog is tied to a moving cart, it has two choices." The soldiers exchanged confused glances. "It can run willingly beside the cart," Marcus continued, "or resist until dragged painfully across the ground." One soldier muttered, "And which are we?" Marcus looked into the fire. "The cart moves regardless," the flames reflected in his tired eyes. "So the only question is whether we move with dignity." The soldiers said nothing, not because they fully understood, but because they sensed the emperor believed every word. That night the cold became brutal. A storm rolled across the frontier with terrifying force. Tents collapsed, horses screamed in panic. Lightning split the sky like divine judgment. Marcus remained awake beneath the storm, sitting alone outside his tent wrapped in a soaked cloak. Cassian approached angrily. "You will die out here," Marcus continued watching the storm. "One day, I am serious." "So am I," thunder shook the earth. Cassian crouched beside him. "Why do you refuse comfort?" Marcus thought for a long moment before answering. "Because comfort whispers dangerous lies." "What lies?" "That this moment should be different than it is." Rain poured from the emperor's hair as he spoke. "But reality does not care what we prefer." Another lightning strike illuminated the dark forest beyond camp. Marcus narrowed his eyes. Something moved between the trees. Cassian saw it too. Scouts emerged from the darkness, bloodied and gasping for air. "The tribes," one scout choked out. "They are closer than expected." "How close?" The scout swallowed hard. "Already surrounding us." Immediately horns sounded through the Roman camp. Soldiers scrambled awake, shields lifted, torches flared, fear spread instantly. Marcus rose slowly to his feet while chaos exploded around him. The scout grabbed his arm desperately. "Caesar, we must retreat." Marcus looked toward the forest, then toward his terrified soldiers, then upward toward the raging storm above them. And strangely, he smiled. Not from madness, not from confidence, but from acceptance. "This," Marcus said quietly, "is what we trained for." The first enemy war cry echoed from the darkness, then another, then hundreds. The forest itself seemed alive with violence. Cassian drew his sword. The emperor did not. Instead, Marcus stepped forward into the rain-soaked mud where every soldier could see him. His voice rose calmly above the storm. "Men of Rome," the panic quieted slightly. Marcus scanned their frightened faces. "You wish for easier lives?" No one answered. "So do the weak." Lightning flashed across the battlefield. "But nature made no agreement with your wishes." The enemy cries grew louder, closer. Marcus continued, "You cannot control whether death approaches tonight." His eyes hardened. "But you can control whether you meet it as cowards or as Romans." A terrifying silence followed. Then slowly, one soldier lifted his shield. Another tightened his grip on his spear. Then hundreds more, not because fear disappeared, but because something greater briefly stood above fear. Duty. Marcus finally unsheathed his sword. The steel gleamed beneath the storm. "Remember this," he said, "the obstacle is not merely in the path." His gaze locked onto the approaching darkness. "It is the path." Then the forest erupted. Barbarian warriors charged screaming into the storm like shadows breaking loose from the earth itself. Roman shields collided into formation. Steel crashed against steel. Mud mixed with blood instantly. Marcus moved directly into the chaos beside ordinary soldiers, not behind them. An enemy warrior lunged toward him with an axe. Marcus stepped aside calmly and struck once. Precise, efficient, without hatred. The warrior fell dead into the mud. Another came, then another. The emperor fought without rage. Because rage clouded judgment, and judgment to Marcus was sacred. Around him men screamed in terror and fury while thunder shook the heavens above. Yet inside Marcus something strange happened. Stillness, not peace, not joy, but stillness. The kind forged only when a man fully accepts what he cannot escape. A young Roman soldier nearby froze in fear as enemy warriors closed around him. Marcus grabbed the terrified boy violently. "Look at me." The soldier trembled uncontrollably. "I cannot." You can, the boy's breathing shattered. I'm afraid. Marcus nodded once. So am I, the soldier stared at him in disbelief. The emperor pointed toward the battle. Courage is not the absence of fear. He shoved a shield back into the young man's hands. It is acting correctly despite it. The boy swallowed hard, then returned to the fight. The battle raged until dawn. When sunlight finally pierced the storm clouds, the ground was covered with bodies from both sides. The surviving tribes retreated back into the forests. Rome had held, but barely. Marcus stood among the dead in silence. Rainwater dripped from broken armor. Crows circled overhead. Cassian approached slowly, limping from a wound in his leg. We survived. Marcus looked across the battlefield. For now, you should celebrate victory. Marcus knelt beside a fallen Roman soldier no older than 16. There is no victory here. He closed the dead boy's eyes gently. Only temporary postponements. Cassian watched him carefully. You truly believe life is only suffering, don't you? Marcus stood again. No, he looked toward the rising sun. I believe suffering reveals life, the general frowned. Marcus continued walking through the dead. Luxury hides character. He stepped over shattered shields. Comfort weakens discipline. A cold wind swept across the battlefield. But hardship, Marcus paused beside another fallen soldier. Hardship introduces a man to himself. Far beyond the blood-soaked field, more smoke began rising on the horizon, not from Roman camps. From villages, burning villages. Cassian noticed it too. His expression darkened. The tribes are attacking civilians now. Marcus stared silently at the smoke for a long moment. Then mounted his horse. We ride immediately. You need rest. Marcus gripped the reins tightly. The fire will not rest. And so the emperor rode once more into a world that never paused its cruelty long enough for weary men to recover.